After months of saying if, never when, today came the day Labour have been desperate for. The first female Chancellor of the Exchequer descended on Downing Street with all the Secretaries of State in a new Labour government for their first cabinet meeting and the chance to start governing.
It was the honour and privilege of my life to be invited by the King, His Majesty the King yesterday, to form a government.
It's a cabinet with the most female ministers in history. There are only 3 from minority ethnic backgrounds. It's a cabinet in which only 2 ministers attended private schools. And it's a cabinet that has already started making decisions, like scrapping the scheme to send asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Look, the Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent. Look at the numbers that have come over in the first 6 and a bit months of this year. They're record numbers. That is the problem that we are inheriting. It has never acted as a deterrent, almost the opposite. And I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent.
In his first full day in post, Sir Keir Starmer invited the cameras into Downing Street, pledging to deliver in office what he promised in opposition.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Firstly, have you got used to hearing yourself get called that yet? And secondly, if I may, you said progress isn't going to be like flick of a light switch. You've said that it's going to take a while. But for people at home who are feeling pinched, who are feeling desperate, when can they expect things to start getting any better? A year from now, 2 years from now, before the next election, or perhaps never?
Well, look, on the first question, yes, I'm getting used to it. I'm very happy to be called Keir or Prime Minister. On change, the work has started. And we will deliver change as quickly as we can, and that will include change, within the early months and years of the government. It won't be a question of simply saying nothing's going to change until towards the end of the first term, but different change will be delivered at different speeds, inevitably. What I can't pretend is that we can fix everything overnight. The obvious example of that is the mess the government, or the last government, made in relation to prisons. They mismanaged the building programme. Half the money hasn't been spent. The tough decisions weren't taken on planning. We don't have the prisons we need. And I can't build a prison in 24 hours.
So prisons are a priority, and his new prisons minister is the founder of Timpsons, James Timpson, who employs many ex-offenders and who told this programme earlier this year that much of the prison population shouldn't be there.
And then there's another third, and there's a large proportion of women. Prison is a disaster for them because it's just putting them back in the offending cycle.
The prison minister has huge experience here and has invested a huge amount over many years in relation to prisons, and that's why I wanted to make that appointment. We do need to be clear about the way in which we use prisons. We need to get away from the fact that for so many people come out of prison, they're back in prison relatively quickly afterwards. That is a massive problem.
Labour's vast majority and the drastic change to Parliament's makeup means pushing through their plans is far easier. For the Conservatives, licking their wounds, the only talk now is who'll lead them next.
Are you going to be the next Tory party
no
leader?
Announcements. We've just got to take our time. We've got to figure out what's happening.
She didn't say no, but one person who has, former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. This evening, Downing Street prepared for the football, and the Prime Minister prepared for a 4-nation tour of the UK and 5 years attempting to deliver what his campaign was sold on: change.
Well, if Labour's top tier are getting down to work, what about the newly elected MPs? Joining me here is Miata Fahnbulleh and from Lincoln, Hamish Falconer. She was previously an economist, still an economist. He was a diplomat, perhaps still a diplomat, but also a hostage negotiator. Very useful skills these days. Thank you very much to both of you for coming in, and congratulations to both of you. Let me start with you, Miata. There's an extraordinary mismatch, isn't there, here, in terms of the number of MPs and the vote share. Does that worry you in any way at all?
Well, listen, I think what was really clear, I knocked on thousands of doors. I've spoken to colleagues who were knocking on thousands of doors, that the country wanted change. And I think what we've delivered is a mandate for change. And we have to deliver. That's the number one priority.
And what do you think that means for you?
So for me, for Peckham specifically, there are 3 things that I heard loud and clear from my constituents. One is the cost of living and getting the economy back on track so that actually people have jobs that pay a decent wage. The second thing is housing. That's a massive issue for us. The third thing is crime and making sure our community is safe. So those are the three things that I'll be looking to this Labour government to have impact on.
I mean, Keir Starmer is very good at managing expectations, and he did that with the timing as well. He said, look, don't expect anything too soon. We've just got in, we're just sitting down to get stuck in. But how much time do you think he realistically has before your voters and constituents start knocking on your door and saying, what's going on?
Well, listen, I don't think we can underestimate this. The inheritance and how atrocious it is. So, the thing I always said with every conversation I had is that we are inheriting one of the toughest backdrops in order to deliver change. People are going to want to see tangible things over the course of the next 5 years. But I think people are realistic. They understand that we can't turn it all around overnight. And the job now is to be really clear about what we will deliver, when we will deliver it, and to take people on the journey. And that is about trust. And the thing that I'm going to try and do is spend a lot of time with my constituents so that they trust me when I say, we can't do it like this, but we will do it. And here are the steps that we're taking towards that.
I want to talk about some of the specifics in a minute, but let's bring in Hamish. Hamish, as I said, you probably got more experience on the foreign stage as a former diplomat than Prime Minister Keir Starmer has, who's mostly been, in this country. What advice would you give him as he goes to meet NATO leaders in Washington next week?
So I think that's probably not necessarily true, Matt, in that as the Director of Public Prosecutions, I know that Keir did a lot of work working with with his equivalents. And I think he has been clear all the way through the campaign that he does see working internationally as a key part of dealing with problems. So I know, particularly in relation to the small boats, for example, is that this is an international problem. So I suspect that he will know more of those people at the NATO summit than you would think. And I wouldn't dream of giving him tips about how to deal with his counterparts, but I think you'll find him pretty focused on those kinds of relationships.
Well, they might come in quite useful, some of those tips, if you were prepared to give them. But what do you think he needs to do in order to re-establish Britain's role, Britain's presence on the global stage?
Well, I think that one of the things that is going to be absolutely clear for us is setting out what it is that the UK is focused on and then being reliable in delivering that. I think one of the things that has really hurt the UK's reputation internationally has been the sort of chop change of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Dominic Raab. There was no clear orientation in foreign policy for quite a long time. And I think we're going to see in Keir and in the excellent new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, a much clearer orientation, first off towards our neighbours in Europe, clear continuity on Ukraine, and a much greater ability, as David says, to reconnect Britain in a wider sphere as well, which I just don't think the Conservatives ever prioritised. And
do you think ditching the Rwanda scheme and not picking a fight with the European Court of Human Rights, is that a good thing? Does that help to establish where Britain actually stands in terms of values?
I think it's hugely important on values. I think it's hugely important practically. So just north of my constituency, we have RAF Scampton, which was proposed by the government as far as the previous government. So I'm going to have to get used to that. It was proposed by the previous government as a holding pen for asylum seekers in, just like Rwanda, another gimmick that clearly won't work. What I think Keir was signalling today really clearly is that we are going to get down to serious business. And Rwanda was not serious business. It's absolutely obvious if you want to deal with small boats, you are going to have to deal with the Europeans in a detailed and sustained way, and a gimmick like Rwanda was no way to do that. So yeah, I do think it is going to make a big difference to our relations with Europe.
Miata, I know that he's ruled out joining the single market or the customs union or indeed the EU, but we do know that frictionful trade with our closest trading partners is a massive problem for businesses in this country. What do you think he should do to try and align ourselves more closely with Europe without breaking any campaign promises?
Yeah, look, I think that our number one priority is growth. We've said that that is a core mission. And in the end, we need to make sure that we have a relationship with our closely traded partner that facilitates growth. And so I think there are lots of things that we can agree and negotiate with, still sits within the constraints of the things that we've said that we would do in the campaign.
And I mean, how do you get growth without, without that closer relationship with the EU? And also, how do you pay for all these public services without raising taxes?
Well, look, I think the way that we get growth is, first, we do need to normalise the relationship. I think the last government started to do that, but there is a lot more that we need to do so that businesses on the front line of this don't feel that friction. But it comes to other things. It comes to the investment that we're going to make. It comes to our workforce plan, our skills planning. It comes to the big strategic bet. Now, we've got that Green Prosperity Plan that says we know that the green economy is going to be a massive driver of growth. We are backing that with our National Wealth Fund. We've got a proper plan to do that. And that's the thing that's going to deliver in the long term.
Finally, Miata, are you nervous checking into Parliament? Excited,
but I think a real sense of responsibility. You know, so much is broken. Our job is now to fix it. And I think we wear that with huge grace, responsibility, and, you know, clarity about what needs to be done.
Hamish, as a former hostage negotiator, are you terrified about joining Parliament?
Yes, I think it's going to be a steep learning curve for all of us who are new to it. But as Miata says, I think we've got an excellent new cohort of Labour MPs who are hungry to try and deliver for their areas, and we'll all be fighting to do that from I get down to London tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll all be pushing.
And fighting to get some office space and a desk. Hamish Faulkner, Miata Fahnbulleh, thank you very much, and good luck to you both. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Matt.
Now, the Green Party say that they have achieved everything they set out to do in the general election, winning all 4 of their key target seats. The party quadrupled their representation in the Commons, gaining the most seats in their history. The new MPs include Eddie Chowns, who overturned a Tory majority of almost 25,000 to win North Herefordshire. So which issues brought Green voters to the polls in such huge numbers? Andrew Misra now reports.
North Herefordshire, a rural constituency with a rustic charm. Held by the Conservatives for more than a century. But now these green and pleasant pastures just got a whole lot greener.
Diminishing endangered species.
The MP here was Sir Bill Wiggin, first elected in 2001. His Tory majority in 2019, nearly 25,000. Ellie Chown came 4th back then. Now she's the area's first Green MP. The party targeted voters here, beefing up their support to win by almost 6,000 votes.
We knew that we could win it if we were able to put in the time and the energy and the effort. I mean, it's a place where the Green presence has been growing for many years. I've been a ward councillor for a number of years in a place that used to be really solidly Conservative, you know. But that shifted from 70% Conservative to 80% Green within just 4 years.
So you think the signs were there?
So the signs were absolutely there.
The appeal of the Greens in urban areas like Bristol, with lots of young voters, is perhaps more obvious. It helps explain how the party won in Bristol Central. The picture in rural North Herefordshire, though, is pretty different. Were you surprised about the Green MP winning here?
I was, really, yes. I was hopeful. Well, I was very surprised because we've been Conservative here in Leominster since my grandmother was born in 1905. So I never thought I'd see it go any other colour in my lifetime.
That it has shows how the party reached a wide demographic in this historic county. Do you mind me asking who you voted for?
Green.
And is that for the first time or have you done that before?
First time.
Do you think it was mainly environmental issues that people have voted?
It would be one of them, but also Ellie has really touched people's hearts.
But to some, the change is a shock to the system.
My mother always used to say that you could put a broomstick up for Conservative in Leominster and they'd always win. So they would be turning in their graves, I'm afraid.
Call me a cynic, but is this not just a protest vote against the Tories? They've been here for 100 years.
I don't think it is just a protest vote. What's happened here is a really positive vote for what the Greens have been offering.
Labour have got more than 400 MPs. You, the Green Party, have got 4. How will you hold them to account on environmental issues when that fingerprint is quite small?
By kicking up a fuss, you know, if need be. I mean, I think we have seen how Labour, for example, have really rowed back from their environmental commitments.
What will you be doing to try to change that?
You know, I haven't yet been in Parliament, so I don't know exactly what parliamentary procedures and opportunities there will be for me to do that.
When Ellie Chown heads down to Westminster on Monday, she'll be joined by other MPs from her party, something that's never happened before.